I've been driving night trains for 15 years. Freight, mostly. Steel, lumber, gravel. Dead weight rolling through empty towns while the rest of the world sleeps. It's a lonely job. You get used to the hum, the dark, the way station lights flicker past like dying fireflies. You get used to silence too, or the way your own breathing fills the cab. That night started like any other. 11:12 p.m., departure from the old junction south of Miller's Crossing. I had 6 loaded cars behind me and 4 hours of track ahead. Somewhere around the second hour, near that long straightaway past Lorman Creek, I noticed something strange. The GPS display reset. It was subtle. Just a flicker. I glanced down and the screen showed our speed as 0 for a second. Then it corrected. No big deal. Faulty telemetry, I told myself. Happens sometimes. But then I passed the Miller's Crossing switch again. It didn't make sense. That switch is 5 miles back from where we started. I hadn't turned around. Trains don't turn around. And I never stopped. But there it was, same rusted siding, same tilted signal post. I called dispatch. No answer. Not even static. Just the quiet click of the line cutting out. I stared at the switch until it disappeared into the rearview, certain I was overtired. Maybe I dozed without realizing. Micro-sleep. It happens. Then the alarm blinked. Cab pressure dropped briefly. Another glitch. I silenced the alert and opened the cabin window to steady myself. Cold air poured in, sharp and wrong. Not like a breeze. More like breathing. Like the train exhaled something foul. I pressed on. Another hour, maybe less, and the track curved just before the old trestle over Hollow's End. The trestle was under maintenance. We weren't supposed to go that way. I had clear instructions to reroute through the South Bend. But here it was, looming ahead, the same chipped boards, same missing guardrail on the right side. I braked. Nothing happened. That was the first moment I really felt fear. The train didn't respond. I cut throttle, reverse pressure, still nothing. We rolled forward, slow and steady, like something was pulling us. I stood, banging on the console, trying to force the brake override. No response. The lights dimmed. Every switch on the panel went dead. And then we crossed the trestle. I stared down into blackness. No river below, no supports, no reflections. Just void, like the world ended beneath us. I held my breath, not out of fear but instinct, like I expected the air to vanish too. And then, I was back at the start. Miller's Crossing switch, 11:12 p.m., GPS reading 0 again. It was exact. The time. The landscape. Even the weight in the cab felt the same. I sat frozen for 5 minutes, just watching the readouts, waiting for the glitch to correct again. But it didn't. Everything continued like normal. Until I reached the trestle again. This time, I didn't try to stop. I stood up, walked to the cabin door, and watched the track ahead. And when we passed over the void again, I kept my eyes open. I looked straight down. What I saw didn't make sense. It was the cab. Another cab, my cab, below us. Inside it, someone was sitting. Same uniform. Same jacket. Same hat. Only, he was staring up at me. And he looked terrified. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My voice stuck in my throat like a stone. Just stared down into the other cab, at the other me, wide-eyed and trembling. And he was staring back. Then the trestle vanished beneath us again. I felt the wheels grip rail, the subtle jolt as we reconnected with solid ground. I stumbled back into the chair, heart pounding like a piston. I didn't know what to do, so I did what I'd done before. I let it ride. The radio crackled alive. I reached for it instinctively. ING. Can you read me? 5-3-7, come in. My hand froze midair. That was my voice. I let it play, listened to myself stammering the same words I'd spoken maybe an hour ago, if time even worked here. Right down to the sigh I made when dispatch didn't answer. Word for word. I shut it off. By the third loop, I'd stopped feeling real fear. There's a kind of terror that burns out and leaves only cold behind. I tried documenting everything, the exact time each flicker on the GPS happened, every alarm, every tiny detail on the track. But it never changed. Everything repeated. Except the mirror. That's what I started calling the man below. My reflection. My shadow. The only part of the loop that shifted, even slightly. The second time we passed each other, he wasn't just staring. He was banging on his window. By the fourth time, he was screaming. I didn't hear it, of course. There's no sound out there, none at all, but I could see his mouth open, wide and ragged. He clawed at the glass like an animal. His face was thinner now. His cheeks sunken. Something behind his eyes looked broken. On the fifth pass, he was gone. I leaned out the cabin window, craning to see. The cab was still there beneath us, moving on an invisible track. But it was empty. Just the seat. No driver. The window smeared with what looked like blood. I think that's when I accepted I wasn't the first. I stopped trying to stop the train. I stopped calling for help. Even sleep stopped coming. The engine never paused, never slowed. Food ran out. Water, too. Didn't matter. I never felt hungry or thirsty anyway. Just watched. Watched the loop. Watched myself, loop after loop, changing a little more each time. On the seventh loop, the train behind me was longer. At least 15 cars now, all sealed tight. I hadn't added them. I hadn't passed any sidings. But there they were, heavy and silent. I walked the length once, shining my flashlight into each coupling. They didn't rattle like empty cars. Something was in them. I never opened them. The night didn't change. No sun, no stars, no dawn. Only the cold rhythm of track and steel and ghost light. I think I saw others, eventually. Flickers in the distance. Lights on other trains, maybe? They always vanished when I blinked. I started talking to myself. Not aloud, just little thoughts, mantras. This is still real. I'm still me. I was here first. But the voice answering back grew less familiar. Not hostile. Just off. Like hearing a recording of yourself, and realizing how strange you sound. Now, I wait for the crossing again. The next loop. Maybe this time I won't see myself at all. Maybe I'm the one who's gone out. We don't talk about mile marker 93. Not officially. Not in logs or radio chatter. But every driver on the Northern Freight Line knows to watch it, especially at night. They say the signal there sometimes goes red for no reason, even when the track ahead is clear. I'd passed it 100 times without issue, until 2 weeks ago. It was 2:17 a.m. when the signal blinked red. I was westbound with a half-loaded timber train, slow and steady, just under 30 miles per hour. I spotted the red flash maybe 50 meters out. I braked out of habit, not fear. Figured it was a faulty relay. But the engine lurched harder than usual. The cars behind shuddered like something had yanked them. That's when I heard the knock. Not the usual creak or clang, this was deliberate. 4 knocks. Sharp. Rhythmic. From inside the cabin. I turned fast, heart in my throat. Empty. The second knock came from the floor, right under my feet. I checked everything, the hatch panel, the tool locker, even the fuse box. Nothing. Just that silence you only get out there, when the world shrinks to your own heartbeat. I radioed dispatch. Static. I tried again, leaning into the mic. That's when the red signal vanished. I swear I didn't blink. 1 second it was glowing through the windshield, the next, it was just gone. Not green, not off. Gone. Like someone had yanked the pole from the earth. I eased off the brake and crept forward. The track beyond mile 93 dips slightly, then curves left through what used to be a logging village. Nothing but rot and rust now, collapsed sheds, broken fences, a schoolhouse overtaken by trees. You can see it all from the track. Or you used to. That night, the fog came in fast. I don't mean a low mist. I mean whiteout. Visibility dropped to maybe 10 feet. Headlights useless. The only guide I had was the track beneath me. I slowed to a crawl. That's when I saw the man. He was standing just off the shoulder, not quite on the track but close enough to touch it. Black coat. No hat. Face in shadow. I leaned out the side window and yelled. Nothing. Just watched me roll past, hands at his sides. 30 seconds later, I passed him again. Same coat. Same posture. But this time his head was tilted slightly, like he was listening. Or smelling. I called out again. Nothing. The third time I saw him, he was standing on the track. I slammed the horn. The sound came out muffled, like it had been swallowed by the fog. He didn't move. Just stood there until I was almost on top of him, and then he was gone. Not jumped. Not rolled. Gone. I stopped the train. Jumped down with my flashlight, boots crunching on gravel. The fog swallowed the beam after a few feet, but I searched anyway, under the cars, along the embankment, into the woods. I found no footprints. No warmth in the rails. Nothing. I climbed back into the cab. Checked the time. It was 2:17 a.m. Same as before. Down to the second. That made no sense. My watch, the onboard clock, even my phone, they all showed 2:17. I waited. 1 minute. 5. Still 2:17. Then the signal ahead flashed red again. I turned back to look, and this time, the man was in the cab. Sitting in the second seat. Staring out the front window like he'd been there the whole time. I didn't move. Not even to breathe. He was maybe 3 feet from me. Same coat. Same posture. He didn't look at me, just stared through the windshield at the fog-choked track. Like he was waiting for something. I said, "Who are you?" No answer. Not even a twitch. His face remained in profile, blurred somehow, like looking through old glass. I don't know how long I sat there before I noticed something else. The engine wasn't running. The console lights were dead. No hum, no vibration from the wheels. It was like the train had stopped being a train. Just stillness. Even the fog seemed frozen. I reached for the brake lever. He spoke. "You passed him." His voice was thin. Dry. But what made my skin crawl was the fact that he didn't open his mouth. The words just happened, like a thought projected into the space between us. I asked, "Past who?" He turned, slow and stiff, until I could see his full face. It was mine. Not just similar, exact. Down to the scar above my right brow I got in high school. But the eyes were wrong. They weren't looking at me. They weren't looking at anything. He said again, "You passed him." And then the lights came back on. The cabin filled with the familiar hum, the slight shake of the engine returning. My console flickered to life. The clock read 2:18. The fog outside began to shift, parting in long tendrils as if the train was finally moving forward again. The seat beside me was empty. I drove the rest of the shift in silence, watching the trees slide past like shadows in a fish tank. When I reached the final yard, I jumped down and vomited beside the track. My supervisor asked if I was sick. I lied and said it was a migraine. That should have been the end of it. But the next night, I got the same route. Same time. Same weather. I told myself I was ready, that it was just a hallucination. Sleep deprivation. Gas leak in the cabin, maybe? At 2:17, I saw the red light. This time, I didn't stop. I kept going, eyes locked forward. I thought I could beat it, whatever it was. But halfway through the curve past the village ruins, I saw him again. Off the track this time, perched on the old schoolhouse roof. Watching. Not me, the train. I passed the red signal again at the exact same second, 2:17. That shouldn't have been possible. The route isn't circular. But there it was. The next night I didn't go in. Called in sick. My manager didn't push. A few hours later, a buddy of mine, Tanner, guy I trained with, texted me from the route. "You seeing this?" He sent a photo. It was blurry, like it had been taken mid-motion. But I knew what I was looking at. The red signal. Mile marker 93. And someone sitting beside him in the cab. He never said who. Tanner didn't show up to work the next night. HR said he resigned without notice. No one's heard from him since. Now I drive only day routes. Refused anything after dark. I don't care if they fire me. I still wake up sometimes around 2:17 a.m., sweating, heart pounding. I check the clock every time. And sometimes, it's blinking red dot we're not supposed to check the last car. That's what the night shift supervisor told me on my first graveyard run. If it's locked, leave it. Manifest says empty, you don't open it. Not our problem. I thought he was joking at first. We were hauling a short cargo, 5 cars total. The last one was old, mismatched. Faded paint, dented panels. Not uncommon. But it didn't match the serials on our standard fleet. It looked forgotten. Just leave it alone, he repeated. So I did. For the first 3 nights. But on the 4th I heard it. A thud. Sharp. Not the kind of vibration you get from cargo settling. This was deliberate. Like something falling, then dragging. I radioed dispatch. They said the manifest was clear. That car's been dead weight for months. No contents. Just storage. Still, the sound returned. Thudding every few minutes. Like pacing. At the next sighting, I got out and walked the train. Nothing unusual, until I reached the last car. The padlock was newer than the rest of the door. Clean. Shiny. And cold. Colder than metal should feel at night. When I pressed my palm to the panel, I swear it pulsed under my skin. Not vibration. Something slower. Heavier. I knocked. Instantly, 3 knocks replied, from inside. I jumped back so fast I scraped my hand on the latch. I backed off, stared at the door for a full minute. No other sounds. No movement. I told myself it was echo. Steel can bounce sound weirdly when it's hollow. But I didn't sleep that morning. The next night, I brought a flashlight. A real one. High lumen, long beam. Just in case. I waited until halfway through the run, when the line curved along the ridge above Lyle's Hollow. No signal reception there, no cameras. I climbed down and approached the last car. The metal didn't feel cold anymore. It felt warm. Like a body. I circled around and shone the light through the air vent grates. Nothing. Just walls and dust, except for the back corner. Something was scratched there. Deep grooves in the panel, like fingernails. I counted 7 parallel marks. All the same angle. All recent. Then I heard the breath. Not a sound, a breath. Inhale. Exhale. Heavy. Wet. It was just on the other side. I dropped the light. It rolled beneath the car, beam flickering. I crouched, hard hammering, and reached underneath to grab it. That's when I saw the foot. Not a full one. Just the edge. Pale. Dirty. It pulled back the second my light hit it. I scrambled up and ran the length of the train. Climbed into the cab and didn't stop until the siding at Monroe. I told the yard crew. They laughed. Said I was pulling the rookie stunt again. That car's empty, man. Always has been. They didn't check it. I asked dispatch to pull the manifest again. This time I watched them. The file loaded. 5 cars listed. No 6th. The last car, the one I'd walked to, touched, looked into, didn't exist on the record. I quit early that morning. Clocked out before sunrise. Slept in my truck in the yard lot, engine running. By noon, I convinced myself it was stress. Sleep deprivation. You start seeing things when you've been up too long, especially in the dark. I almost believed that, until I came in for my shift the next night. And the last car was gone. No rust, no scuffs on the rail, no record in the logs. Just 5 cars, ending in the usual flatbed. But that wasn't the part that scared me. The part that scared me was what I found inside the cab. Something had left 7 scratch marks on the window beside my seat. I didn't tell anyone about the scratches. They weren't random. 7 narrow gouges, perfectly parallel, running from top to bottom on the inside of the window. Too even to be accidental. I touched them. They were deep, like something had dragged nails across the glass with careful, deliberate pressure. But what froze me was where they stopped. Right at eye level. Like whatever made them had been watching me sleep. I called in sick that night. Then the next. They didn't argue. Night drivers are a revolving door. Too many quit, too few apply. I sat at home staring at the scratch marks I'd traced onto a notepad, trying to figure out what I'd seen. On the 3rd night, I got a voicemail. It was from Tanner. The same guy who once warned me to avoid mile 93. He was a few years ahead of me, drove the heavy lines south of Ridgeway. His message was simple. "Did you open it?" That's all he said. 5 seconds. Click. I called him back. Straight to voicemail. I drove to his apartment that night. No answer. The door had a red tag from management. No entry pending review. I didn't sleep. Next shift, I went in early. Talked to Marvin, the old mechanic who runs night maintenance. I told him about the car, how it vanished, how it didn't show on the logs. He just looked at me for a long time and said, "It moves." "What does?" He nodded toward the siding yard. "The car. It moves when it's ready." I asked what that meant. He didn't answer. Just handed me a key. It was old, iron-worn, cold like the lock on the last car had been. I said, "Where's it kept?" He said, "You'll find it." He was right. That night, as I rolled up past the West Junction, the 6th car was back. No record. No warning. Just sitting there, hitched at the end like it had never left. I walked to the rear during our siding pause at Hollow Ridge. The lock was gone. The door slightly ajar. I opened it. Inside was darkness, thick, absolute. I shone my light and stepped inside. The air was damp and heavy, smelling of mildew and copper. The walls were scratched all over. Hundreds of lines, carved at every angle. Some shallow, some deep. And on the floor, something worse. A mattress. Old, sunken, stained. Next to it, a small metal bowl. Empty. Beside that, a single child's shoe. I turned to leave. The door slammed shut behind me. I lunged at it, pushed, kicked, nothing. It wouldn't budge. The light began to dim. Not flicker, dim. Like something was draining the battery. And then I heard it. Breathing. Slow. Heavy. Just behind me. I turned slowly. In the far corner of the car, something shifted. Pale limbs unfolding. Knees bending the wrong way. A face in the dark with too many shadows, too few features. It whispered, "You looked." Then everything went black. When I woke, I was in the cab. Alone. Engine running. Doors locked. I checked the rear view. 5 cars. No 6th. I looked down at my hands. My palms were bleeding, 7 narrow cuts across each one. Later, I asked Marvin what it was. What that car really was. He said something I'll never forget. "It's not what it is. It's who put it there. Some things, they don't get manifest numbers. They just ride. Until someone opens the door. When you train as a night driver, you're supposed to ride double for the first 3 months. 2-man crews. Safety protocols, fatigue management, all that. But we're short-staffed, always are. So when my regular partner Jeff called out sick, they paired me with a temp. Said his name was Doyle. No last name on the form. The yard manager shrugged. "He's certified. That's all you need." Doyle was waiting by the cab when I arrived, already suited up, clipboard in hand. He didn't smile. Just nodded and climbed in like he'd done it 1,000 times. That was the first thing that felt wrong. He didn't ask where anything was. Didn't fumble. Didn't check the gauges like most new guys do. Just settled in and stared ahead. We left the yard at 12:03 a.m., hauling mixed cargo east through Pine Ridge. The first hour passed in silence. I tried small talk. Asked how long he'd been driving. He didn't look at me. Long enough, he said. That was it. At the 2-hour mark, we passed through an old maintenance tunnel, short stretch, maybe 100 meters long. When we emerged, Doyle wasn't in his seat. I thought he'd gone to the bathroom. But the cab door was closed. I checked the mirror, no movement in the walkways. I stood up, leaned into the corridor, called his name. No answer. I checked the cabin. Empty. The train kept moving steady speed. No signal loss, no brake anomalies. But Doyle was gone. I radioed dispatch. Told them I'd lost visual on my crew partner. They told me Doyle had never signed in. I said, "He boarded with me." Asked the yard. Silence. Then, "Sir, we don't have anyone by that name assigned tonight." I hung up. Back in the seat, I stared at the controls. My reflection looked wrong in the windshield, too still. Like it wasn't copying me perfectly. My face was pale, eyes wide, mouth slightly parted. Then I blinked, and the reflection didn't. It was gone when I blinked again. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles turned white. 10 minutes later, Doyle was back. Just sitting there, like he'd never left. He didn't say a word. I didn't either. I watched him from the corner of my eye. His face didn't move. Not once. Not when we hit a curve. Not when we passed through a crossing. He didn't even blink. His mouth opened at 2:41 a.m. "Do you remember the man before you?" "What?" He turned toward me. I wish he hadn't. His face didn't look human in that moment. It had the right pieces, eyes, nose, mouth, but the angles were wrong. Like someone had recreated a face from memory and missed the little details. It looked learned. Studied. Not lived in. He said again, "The man before you. Do you remember?" I said no. He nodded slowly, as if that confirmed something for him. Then he looked forward again, hands folded neatly in his lap. "You replaced him." "Who?" But he wouldn't answer. The rest of the trip passed in silence. At the final junction, Doyle stood, opened the cab door, and stepped out before we'd fully stopped. I watched him walk into the yard's fog and disappear behind the decommissioned sheds. I asked the yard manager about him later. "What Doyle?" The temp form was gone. No record of him. No clipboard. No shift tag. Just my name on the manifest, listed as solo driver. That night, as I showered, I noticed something on my chest. 7 small scars, running vertically beneath my collarbone. Too straight for scratches. Too clean to be accidental. Like surgical markers. I didn't sleep that day. I just stared at those marks. 7 pale scars, spaced like tally marks under my skin. I pressed each one. No pain. Just a tingling sensation, like static. I told myself they'd always been there. Old injuries. Childhood accident. Some scar I'd forgotten. But I couldn't stop touching them. The next night, I drove alone. Dispatch didn't pair me with anyone. I asked about backup, about double crews. They said staffing was tight. That it was fine. "Just another quiet haul," the supervisor said. I asked, "Who was assigned before me on this route?" He paused. Then said, "We don't keep logs that far back." That far back? I'd only taken the route 6 weeks ago. The air in the cab felt heavier that night. Every switch clicked louder. Every bump in the track jolted deeper into my bones. I kept checking the reflection in the windshield, waiting for it not to blink again. Around 1:30 a.m., the cabin got cold. Not normal cold. I mean bone deep, sterile cold, like a hospital room that's been sealed off. The kind of cold that makes your breath taste like metal. I turned the heat up. Nothing changed. At 2:41 a.m., the same minute Doyle had spoken to me the night before, the radio came alive. But it wasn't dispatch. It was breathing. Slow. Deliberate. Then my name. Thomas. No static. No distortion. Just my name, spoken in my own voice. I shut the radio off, pulled the emergency brake and killed the engine. The train groaned to a stop. Then I heard a knock. Behind me. 3 soft taps on the cabin door. I turned, heart pounding. I didn't open it. I just stood there, frozen, while the knocking continued. 3 more. Then silence. I opened the door slowly. Empty. I checked the walkways. Clear. No wind. No animals. No sign of anything human. Except the boot prints. Identical to mine, running in a line down the gravel, except backward. As if someone had walked in reverse, step by perfect step, leading away from the engine toward the rear. I followed them. I don't know why. Maybe because I needed to know. Maybe because stopping was worse. They led to the second-to-last car. And then vanished. The metal door was slightly open. Inside, cables. Coils. Tools. Nothing unusual, until I saw the panel. A hatch in the floor. Rusted. Unlatched. I lifted it. Beneath was a space no larger than a coffin. And inside, folded neatly like a stored doll, was a man. Wearing my uniform. My badge. My face. His eyes opened. He didn't move. Didn't blink. Just looked at me, like a mirror come alive. Then he whispered, "It's your turn." I dropped the hatch and ran. Didn't stop until I was back in the cab, sweating, breath ragged. I started the train. Pushed the throttle. Anything to get it moving again. The wheels screamed against the rail like they didn't want to go. When I got back to the yard, no one said a word. No one asked why I was early. Why I looked like I'd seen something impossible. That night, I slept in my truck again. When I woke, the scars were gone. But something else was there. My face. In the rearview mirror, I watched myself adjust the mirror. Only, I wasn't touching it. My reflection moved first. Everyone has a part of the route they don't like. For me, it's the dead section. 12 miles of decommissioned track the company reopened 5 years ago. No towns, no crossings, no signals. Just trees. Dense and wet and leaning too close. The rails that don't hum right. The sound's wrong, like they're hollow. Like they're remembering something. We only use that section after midnight. Supposedly to avoid daytime traffic. But I've never seen another train near it. Not once. A month ago, I was assigned a solo freight run, eastbound, starting just past the dead section. Nothing unusual, 7 cars, mixed cargo, clear manifest. The only strange note was a handwritten addition at the bottom of the file. "Do not stop." I laughed it off. Probably a joke from dispatch. But I remembered it. Because halfway through, I had to stop. Around mile marker 217, the brakes pulled hard. No alarms, no alerts, just this sudden wait, like the whole train had become lead. I checked the gauges. Normal. But we weren't moving. It felt like something had taken root beneath us, holding the wheels in place. I stepped out into the dark. The air was heavy. Wet. My flashlight beam stretched maybe 6 feet before it got swallowed by the trees. No sounds. Not even wind. And the smell, something between mold and bleach. Sharp and ancient. I walked the line, boots crunching gravel. That's when I saw the gap. About 30 feet of rail had vanished. Not twisted. Not broken. Gone. The ground where the track should have been was smooth, like it had never been there. No ties, no bolts. Just dirt and moss in a shallow trough, like a scar that had healed wrong. I stood there, trying to make sense of it. Checked the GPS. Still said I was on the line. Still showed green track ahead. Then I heard movement in the woods. Not twigs breaking. Not rustling. Walking. Deliberate. Someone circling just beyond the reach of my light. I called out. No answer. Then, another light. Farther down the line, maybe 50 yards. A second flashlight beam, faint and flickering. Someone else? I shouted again. The light flicked off, then came back on, but closer. I backed away toward the train, heart hammering. Whoever was out there knew I was here, knew I was alone. I climbed back into the cab and locked the door. The moment I did, the lights died. Not the train lights, the outside world. Like someone had turned off the moon. Just black. I couldn't even see my hand in front of my face. I sat there, breathing shallow, listening to the metal creak and groan around me. Then a tap. Right against the glass. I turned. Something was outside the window. I couldn't see its face, only its silhouette. It didn't move, didn't flinch, even when I reached for the throttle. I slammed it forward. Nothing happened. Slammed it again. Still nothing. Then the train began to move. Not forward, backward. Slow at first, then faster. The trees outside blurred into streaks of darkness. The cab vibrated with a low, guttural hum that didn't sound like machinery. It sounded alive. The GPS flashed, position unknown. The silhouette was gone. The lights returned, dim, flickering. And when I looked out the rear window, the rails were back. But they weren't right. They twisted into the woods. A path that didn't exist. A track that was never laid. And I was on it. The train wouldn't stop. The new track curved where no map said it should. The trees pressed in tighter, branches brushing the cars like fingers across a coffin. I pulled the brake, dead. Hit emergency shutdown, nothing. We rolled deeper into black. I checked the cabin clock. 2:11 a.m. It never changed. I stared at it for minutes. Maybe hours. It kept flashing the same numbers. Every second the same as the last. I tried the radio. No static. No connection. Just silence. A full, deep silence that filled my head like a vacuum. And then a voice. Not through the speakers, inside the cab. I told you not to stop. I turned. There was no one. The words hung in the air, heavy and wet. I grabbed my flashlight and opened the side door. The air outside was thick, like stepping into a swimming pool. The forest didn't look like any place I'd seen along the route. The trees weren't right. Their trunks weren't bark. They were too smooth. Pale. Almost skin-like. And they pulsed, barely, like breathing. I stepped back. The train screeched. Not braked, screeched. The kind of sound metal makes when it's being bent. I ran through the cars toward the back, trying to get a sense of the line we were on. Each car I passed was different. I mean wrong. One was full of old furniture covered in sheets. Another had a single hospital bed bolted to the floor. The next was completely empty, but the walls were padded. The car after that? It was my apartment. Same couch. Same rug. Same coffee mug on the table. But dust-covered, like no one had lived there in years. I didn't go inside. I kept running. When I reached the last car, I looked out. The rails behind us were gone. We weren't following a track anymore, we were carving one. The metal just laid itself ahead as we moved, folding out from the forest floor like ribbon, stretching and hissing into place. Behind us, it sank again, swallowed by dirt and moss. The train was riding its own path. I ran back to the cab. Still 2:11 a.m. The windshield now showed only one thing, a single red light in the distance, steady, unmoving. It pulsed slowly. Not mechanical. Like a beacon. Or an eye. Then I saw the reflection. My own face in the glass, staring back, except it wasn't moving like I was. It smiled. Only I hadn't. I raised my hand. The reflection didn't. It just kept smiling. I shut my eyes and slammed the controls, everything I could touch, everything I could flip. Lights, switches, pressure valves. The cabin went dark. When I opened them again, I was alone. Back in the yard. Dawn. I stumbled out of the cab. My knees gave. The cars were there, normal. The logs, the manifest. All correct. All 6 accounted for. No twisted woods. No pale trees. No red light. I ran to the supervisor's office, babbling. He told me I must have nodded off, said the black box showed no anomalies, that I never left the line, that everything was normal. But he wouldn't meet my eyes. When I got home, I checked the cabin camera footage. I'd forgotten my dashcam runs during all shifts. I scrubbed through the night. At 2:11 a.m., the footage froze. For 6 hours. Then, just before the tape ended, one frame flickered back. A single second of video. It showed the cabin empty, except for something sitting in the driver's seat, wearing my clothes, staring into the lens, and smiling.